Hi, this is Glenn of Beaver Labs. Today I'm going to go through a tutorial of a printed circuit board design package called Eagle. I'm going to invoke my version of it here. Brings us up to a control panel. Control panel is where you control the schematic, the printed circuit board, and library. So let's say File, New, Project. It comes up, creates a folder named New Projects, already prompted to change. So I'll change that to Tutorial. You can see the path up here at the top. I'm going to File, New, Schematic. It's going to create a schematic within that file called Untitled.sch. We'll change that name later. We'll expand this. This is the schematic window. First thing you want to do is set the grid. So we'll go up to this grid box up here, click on it, turn the display on, and verify the size. I recommend 0.1 inches. You can select different units here. 0.1 inches, display on, OK. That'll save us a lot of heartburn later if things don't get placed on the grid properly. So the first thing we're going to do is create a frame to work in here, a sheet of paper with a border basically. And to do that, we'll get that out of the library. The library is where we get all of our symbols from. And on the left here, you see a whole bunch of icons that are shortcuts. And this symbol right here says Add. And that goes into your libraries and allows you to select a library and a symbol within the library. And so there they are. All of these things listed here are different libraries. We'll go to the one called Frame. These come with Eagle. And down here, there are frames. Click on that. And in there is a whole bunch of different devices. The one I want is A4L-LOC. You can see when I click on that, over here it pops up what the thing looks like. This is for a symbol, this is for part, but for this thing it only has a symbol. So if we select that, we'll say OK, and now as I move my mouse around, it drags the symbol around, in this case the frame, and I can left click where I want to plop it. I'll just plop it anywhere. And once I do that, another one pops up, and if I keep clicking this, I can keep adding these. I don't want to do that, so I'll just hit the escape key, which brings me back to this add function. I'm done with this for the time being, so I'll say cancel. Now I'd like to place this in a more appropriate position. The easiest way to do that, since I know where I want to put this, is to go up to this information icon here and then click on the lower left hand corner. If I zoom in on here by using the mouse wheel, you can see this little X right there. That's the origin location for this symbol. So I'll click on that and I get this properties window that comes up, and among other things it has position X and Y. So I'll just change that to 0, 0, and click OK, and watch what happens to the symbol. Bump. Pops it down to this little X here, which is the origin point. Notice the cursor location up here, X and Y. As I move the cursor down to 0, 0, that's what it says. So if I want to, you notice this whole thing isn't on the screen. I can move this in a couple of ways, but the best thing to do right now is to go to the View toolbar and say Zoom to Fit. And it gets everything that you've put on this page on the display. So there's the whole schematic area that I'm going to be entering into. Now I want to put a symbol on here. So again, we'll go back to the Add, and this time we're going to go to another symbol library. Excuse me, here it is, the Add function. I'll close down the frame get that all off the screen and zip down here to the Resistor Library. And I'm going to go into this one here, RUS, click on that. And there's a whole bunch of devices here within that resistor. What these are is different package types. These all have the same symbol. Look over here and see this resistor symbol. I can click on any one of these and see that symbol doesn't change. But what does change is the part on the right hand corner here. The description gives you some idea what that is. And depending on what the thing actually looks like, the actual part dimensions, that's how you make the connection between the schematic and the printed circuit board. So I'm going to go down here to RUS 1206, which is my favorite surface mount size for a resistor, and click on that. And I'll say OK. And you see the symbol is following my cursor around. So I'll plop that on here by left clicking 2 or 3 times just to put more than one symbol on the board. When I'm done with that, I can hit the escape. It takes me back to here where I can enter more symbols. Don't want to do that right now, so I'll just say cancel. I'll zoom into these symbols right here. Notice it's automatically given the reference designators of R1, R2, and R3. So let me do a little bit of wiring here. And to do that, we go over here to a net. This is a wire. You don't want to use the wire. You want to use the net. Always want to use the net to enter the wires on the board. So I'll click over on a lead of this resistor and see this green lead comes out. I'll click again to change direction. And that gives me a couple of those. I can add another one here. Notice what happens if I start here and merge with this. Little dot forms. If I go to the information icon and click on the wire, it'll tell me, among other things, what the network name is, and it automatically names it starting with $1. Next would be $2 and so forth, but you can change that at any time. And we'll call this net 1. Now the next time I go into information, it shows that name. Okay, so I've got some wiring, some components on a schematic. Let's go over to the printed circuit board. To do that, you get this little switching icon and click that, and it tells you that it doesn't have a board yet. It's okay, we're just starting, but we can create it from the schematic. So I'll say yes, and bam, there's a printed circuit board. I'll expand that screen. You can switch between the printed circuit board and the schematic easily, and these are linked together. Now this board area that comes up as default is the area which you have to work in Eagle Light, the free version. And the components that you've added to the schematic all line up on the left or left bottom of the schematic on the outside of the border area. Now if you move these, and you move these by clicking this little icon here, and click on it, if I try to place it outside of that border area, it tells you that it's not allowed. So you have to put it inside the board to move it anywhere. Notice this little rubber band here. That's the network that I've added to it. And by the way, before you move those around, it's a good idea to go check the grid here. Turn that on, and I recommend the 0.05 inch grid for the printed circuit board. I see the grid appears there. Let's zoom in a bit. So these have a direct relation to the schematic, R1, R2, R3, R1, R2, R3. Okay, now that we've got these parts on the board, we've got these little rubber band unrouted networks that shows how electrically these need to connect to each other, but we now need to route the wires. We can do that in one of two ways. We can either manually route them or we can auto route them. Let's start with the manual route. See this icon over here is the route icon, and this one next to it is a rip up. Now you can't delete a network electrically, but you can delete the routing of it to bring it back to this unrouted state. So let's make sure that one's connected. Now I'll click on a lead of R3 here and move this around and connect one thing here. Now these up here are different metering that you can use for the kind of edging you want to do on corners. And up over here it tells you what layer you're routing on. It's set for red, the top layer. Let's manually route this other one here. So we'll down and click on this, go over here somewhere, turn the corner, and change this to the bottom side. Now change this to blue. Now click up here and you see a little red or green circle appears, which is the via or feed through to move the wire from one side of the board to the other. Now I'll change this back to the top and connect up to the rest of the network here. Puts another via down, so this wires move from the top side to the bottom side back to the top side. So this is entirely routed. There's no unrouted rubber bands left. This entire circuit, such as it is now entirely routed. But let's say you wanted to auto route it, or even auto route a piece of it. So I'm going to hit Control Z here a couple of times just to bring this back to the unrouted state. And I'll go up here to Tools, Auto Router, OK. Bam. This is very simple. It doesn't take very much time at all, but it uses what it thinks is the best route between those. Now you notice these wires are going to have some physical width. I just use the defaults. But if I go up here to Information and click on one of the segments, among the things it tells me is the width, and the width is showing us 0.01 inches. You can have several selections. You can type it in manually, but let's go to 24. Notice it made that thicker. And you can bring it back or bring it down to 0.01 or 10 mils. That's the way you can control that. Now there's a thing called net classes, and you can define it such that different types of wires like a ground or a 5-volt power by default have a particular net width. But I'm not going to mess with that right now. So there you have it. That's a schematic entry with placing a frame and parts on the schematic, moving and placing the parts on the printed circuit board, and wiring the board. So that's it, other than saving this. So if you go to File, either on the printed circuit board or the schematic, you can say Save As, and it'll take this schematic and board, which is currently untitled, and give it a title. So I can type in, give it the same as the project name, just file name tutorial, save. And when you do that, it'll save, you see the board name up there. And the schematic will get the same name because these are linked together. If I say File, Exit at this point, it'll close them down. If I say File, Close, it'll close down just the file that I'm open. I had that on schematic, so it closed the schematic, but I still got the part file up. Gives me a big banner that says Annotation has been severed. Don't panic. That's just a notation. If I were to open the schematic back up again, I'm going to do that just by clicking the switch, and it opens it back up again. You haven't lost anything. Typically, though, you'll do an exit, and it closes down both the schematic and the board and leaves you just with the control panel up. If I go into the folder there, see if I've got this up here. Okay, Eagle, and there's the tutorial. Double click on that. I see I've got the printed circuit board, I've got the schematic, and a few other files that you don't have to worry about. Now, these files, the schematic, the board, and even the library files, are all in XML format. If I were just to bring this up in a text editor, which I'll use Notepad+, you can see it looks like this. So it's all ASCII printable. You can actually go in and change your circuit board or schematic by editing lines in the text editor if you know what you're doing. That comes in handy on some occasions. So that's it for this lesson. Next we'll tackle the computer-aided manufacturing process to move this into something you can send to a board house to have fabricated. Bye for now.